Orion picked a small white wildflower from the grass and plucked one of its delicate petals. He examined it before surrendering it to the warm late summer breeze.
Doubtful. Universe is too random. Sooner or later, some asteroid or comet will come along and blam!
I clapped my hands too hard and the trees behind us shook, sending dozens of birds squawking overhead.
Bye-bye, planet.
Orion glanced around as a couple of startled rabbits bounded by.
Poetic. Back in my day, arrows had a reputation for subtlety.
I tore the petals off another flower and blew them toward the sun, where they swirled like a tornado before dispersing to all corners of the globe.
A lot can change in 3,000 years.
Orion rolled onto his side, and I watched his arm and torso muscles flex beneath his white t-shirt. A tanned knee peeked out through a stringy hole in his distressed jeans as he crooked one leg. I smiled in a covetous way. As much justice as the leather vest and loincloth did him back in the day, this boy was born to be dressed by Levi's. It had taken him a couple of weeks to get used to the denim's chafing, but trust me, it was well worth it.
What will happen to us then, when the world ends?
He trailed his fingertip along the inside of my arm. I took a deep breath, enjoying the pleasant shivers his gesture sent through me.
I wouldn't worry about it, since you probably won't live long enough to see it happen. You are, after all, mortal.
I was going for lighthearted honesty, but his deep blue eyes darkened and he flopped onto his back again, heaving a sigh.
Don't remind me.
I felt a familiar pang and lifted my head from the ground. My long, unruly black hair tangled and caught in the unkempt grass. Talk about things changing. In the days BCE, Orion would have scoffed at my claim and declared he was going to live forever. But after thousands of years trapped in the heavens, he had new and complicated feelings about mortality. Feelings even he was still trying to sort out.
I'm sorry. I can always hang you back among the stars if you want me to. Say the word and you can loiter up there forever.
I held my breath as I awaited his response. What if he did want to go back? What if being here was too much for him and his love for me not enough reason for him to stay? Not that I was entirely sure I could put him back among the stars anyway. It had been over 6 months since that fateful Valentine's night when I'd torn him from the heavens, and I still didn't know how I'd done it. An irksome, somewhat frightening fact that was one of very few secrets I was keeping from him, even though I'd sworn I'd always tell him everything. If there's one constant in love, it's the keeping of little white secrets, and I should know. It's kind of my job.
No, absolutely not. Don't even think it.
He clasped his warm hand around my waist, and I released the breath, relieved.
I'd rather spend whatever short time I have here with you than hang among the stars watching life go on without me, watching you go on without me.
We looked into each other's eyes for a long, breathless moment, and then we cracked up laughing. Orion sat up fully, kneading his forehead between his thumb and forefinger.
Yeah, that was a little over the top, wasn't it? There's just so much pressure, trying to be the boyfriend of the goddess of love. What have I gotten myself into?
I loved watching him laugh. He'd been so pensive for the first few weeks of his new life. It had been difficult to watch. Over the past couple of months, he'd gradually started to stabilize, started to relax, but it was still a relief to see him happy.
Technically, it's my mother who's the goddess of love. I do her grunt work.
I was the one who spent countless hours piercing the hearts of mortals with my golden arrows. I was the one who read their souls and matched them with the very partners who would complete them and make them feel whole, safe, and eternally loved. And how did mortals repay me? By calling me still by that awful name the Romans had given me, Cupid, and depicting me as a fat, half-naked male baby. I tried to find the whole thing amusing, but it was a bit much for a goddess to take. I was Eros, the mighty creator of love on earth. I deserved a smidgen of respect.
Yeah, you keep telling yourself that.
Come on, being my boyfriend isn't entirely bad. We have fun, don't we?
As the words left my tongue, I wanted to take them back, half expecting him to object. Lately, Orion had been hinting that he wanted to go check out the fishing village nearby, to be among other mortals and try out the new 21st century vocabulary I'd been teaching him. But even though I knew his rejoining society was inevitable, I didn't want it to happen yet. I wasn't ready to let him go.
I suppose.
You guess. No one says suppose anymore, at least no one under the age of 50.
Yeah, but I'm like 2,750.
Nice use of the pointless interjection of like. You're my prized pupil.
Your only pupil.
With the deftness of a panther, he flung himself over me, bracing a hand on either side of my body and holding himself up so no part of our bodies touched. The wide neck of his t-shirt hung open so I could see every line of his perfectly toned chest, and the silver necklace I'd brought for him, a perfect arrow, its pendant, tickled my collarbone. For a second, I thought he was going to kiss me, but instead, his expression grew sheepish.
I am your only pupil, right?
I reached up and touched his face, the light stubble rasping my fingertips.
Never ask me that. You know you are.
He nodded and looked away, and I wondered what he was thinking. Did he really not trust me, or was it some ancient memory that was darkening his heart? Could he possibly be thinking of his first love, Merope, who had broken off their engagement just days before their wedding? I hoped he didn't think me as fickle as she.
Hey, here to have some of that fun right now?
You know I would.
Then catch me.
And I took off at roughly the speed of light. Orion laughed and cursed under his breath as he scrambled to his feet and chased after me. I, of course, slowed my pace to make it fair. This was one of our favorite games, pursuing each other over the wild hillsides and meadows of our quaint North American island. I drove through the woods, nimbly avoiding brambles and fallen trees and foxholes, and grabbed my bow and quiver, filled with silver-tipped hunting arrows rather than my magical golden arrows, from the clearing where we'd left them earlier that day, after a spirited hunt. Orion must have snatched his as well, because seconds later an arrow sliced so close to my ear I could hear the feathered fletching rustle. And it split the bark of a birch tree dead ahead, and I whirled on him, even though I knew he'd missed on purpose. Orion was the only being in existence, mortal or immortal, who was a better shot than me. Not that I would ever admit that.
Are you trying to pierce my ears?
Orion dropped his weapon and pulled me to him with a grin. He tilted my head to the sides, smoothing my hair back, and gently rubbed my earlobe between his finger and thumb.
And mar these perfect specimens? Never.
Then he kissed my neck and wrapped his warm, strong arms around me, enveloping my slim frame against him. I sighed, simply, happily, a now familiar sensation of peace swirling through my heart. Of all the romances I'd had, of all the people and gods and demigods I'd known, of all the realms I'd visited on earth and in the heavens, the only place that had ever felt like home was right here, right in Orion's arms. I didn't understand it, would never have believed it a few months or years or millennia ago, but it was true. Orion was my soulmate, Orion, who had wedded Eos and dallied with Artemis and gotten himself killed by her and her awful brother Apollo. Orion, the notorious egomaniac, the most reckless thrill-seeker who'd ever lived. A mortal I was still getting to know. He was, in many ways, my polar opposite, but he was my one and only home.
Don't ever leave me. I'd rather die than live without you.
What?
My eyes popped open. Damn, I had said that out loud, hadn't I? My heart began to race as I struggled for an explanation, for words that could have been misheard to sound like the words I'd actually said. His fingers tangled in my hair and he tugged my head back gently but firmly, forcing me to look at him. His eyes were alight with merriment.
What did you just say?
I said...
A deafening crack of thunder shook the ground beneath our feet, sending us staggering together into the nearest tree trunk. Wind whipped my face and rain pelted my skin. The sky above us darkened so quickly there could be only one cause. Terror seized my gut and forced the breath from my lungs. My fingers curled like a vice around Orion's forearm, clinging to him for dear life. He was coming. No, he was already here.
Run! Run!
The end!